Hey, what's up? John Sonmez from simpleprogrammer.com. So I got an interesting question today. Oh gosh, this one is pretty funny. So this one actually comes from one of my favorite question askers I've mentioned before, and he says he asks, is it okay to use freelancer.com? He says, about a year ago, I read about a well-paid lead programmer that was caught using freelancer.com to produce much of his code. If I were his boss, I would not care as long as the finished product was excellent and done in a timely manner. He used his own money after all. But I suspect that that would be the kiss of death in some environments. What do you think? So this is kind of funny. I think I've seen an article about this, or I've encountered this before, where essentially, if you don't know what he's talking about here, what he's talking about is there's a site called freelancer.com, the same as UpWork or whatever, where you can hire a developer, hire someone. You know, I use UpWork a lot for hiring people to do different things, right? Within Simple Programmer, small tasks, and I find people that I want to do bigger tasks there, right? So you can freelance out or hire out some work, some programming work, in fact. And so what he's talking about here is this idea that this guy, he basically was a programmer, right? And he needed to get some work done, so he basically hired out some people on freelancer.com to do the code, to write the code, or develop the software, or to maybe develop parts of it, and then he put it together and he turned that in. And so he got in big trouble with that. So what do I think about this? First of all, I agree. You know, as long as the work got done and it was of quality work, I don't really care, right? I mean, personally, for me, if I'm going to pay you to do a job, I don't care how you do that job, right? For the most part, I don't want to know how you do the job. Whatever you got to do the job. Just give me the results, and that's the way that I think. But I don't think that is how most bosses and how corporate mentality works. I think this would be more, you could get away with this more in a small business, dealing with someone who's an entrepreneur like me. But at a big company, there's a few reasons why this isn't going to work. So I'm just going to give you my warning, my advice on this. Don't do this, right? This is not a good idea. Gosh, I mean, at the end, I'll tell you why if you really do want to do this. But in general, this is going to carry a high amount of risk, especially if you're working for some kind of corporation, and it's probably you're probably going to have some really bad repercussions if you do this and you do get, quote, caught. Now, again, I don't see anything wrong with it. I totally agree with doing this on principle. I'm very practical, right? I want to be pragmatic and give you pragmatic advice and tell you don't do this. But if you want to not listen, I've got some strategies. But first, let's talk about, like, from a corporate perspective, why this might be frowned upon. So there's a couple of things, right? First of all, most bosses, right, working for software development companies, don't understand real economics of the business, right? They're just getting a paycheck. They're just doing their job, and they don't think in those terms, right? They have a corporate mindset to some degree. They don't think about entrepreneurship and the actual how the business makes money and from a practical perspective. They're thinking, I need to cover my ass. I can't have an employee that is going and hiring people, right, in order to work for us to do these tasks. Okay, so that's probably the mentality. They just don't understand. They're not thinking that way, and you have to realize that most people, really in general, think about a job is getting. They show up and they get a paycheck. They don't really connect the dots to how that happened and the money that the business makes and all the economics involved. So I think that's working against you from the beginning here, right? So the second thing with this is that there is certain liability thing here, right? I'm not a lawyer. This isn't legal advice, but I'll tell you that it seems to me, especially at a corporate level, that if you hire out another contractor to do something, there could be some employment type of conflicts there? Is it the employee contractor relation? There could be some kind of liability concerns if let's say that code went into medical equipment and it killed someone, and then what happened? It's kind of negligence perhaps on the company's part to had let their employee go and hire someone who they didn't know and build this software. I don't know. It seems like a stretch to me. Like, it seems unlikely, but I'm pretty sure that corporate lawyers would get pretty up in arms about an employee hiring out freelancers on a site like that in order to develop the work. Plus, you've also got the issue, this is probably actually the most important issue in that case, which is the intellectual property issue of, some company having some other programmers develop their intellectual property. Now, were those programmers paid? Did they get paid fully? Did they sign over the intellectual property rights? Have all these things been done correctly so that it's a legal, if you, for example, let's say that you hired out someone on freelancer.com and you're an employee working for some company, or let's say you're working for Microsoft or something like that, and then they build some software and Microsoft goes and sells this software to millions of people, and then that programmer comes back and says, hey, wait, I wrote that code, that's my software. That could be a big problem, right? And then you got to follow that legal trail. So I think there's just a bunch of issues from that perspective at the bigger corporation issue. I'm not trying to make excuses, but I can see why this, while it logically seems like, oh, this would be a good idea, and it makes sense why that might not work. Now, with that said, do I think this is a good idea if you could potentially get away with it? Yeah, I think so. I think if you're going to do this, though, first of all, there's two ways you could do this. One is just go to your boss and just say, hey, look, I want to maximize my time, or heck, I only want to work 10-hour weeks. Do you care if I use my own money and hire developers to get the code done as long as it gets done? And if your manager is really cool, might say, yeah, all right, well, could you just put that in writing so that I can get a permission to do this? Oh yeah, okay, fine. That's unlikely to happen, but hey, it's worth a shot. If you're going to do this on the down low, on the sneaky, you got to be really, really careful, and you're probably going to want to check and make sure that the work is done right. You're probably going to want to have airtight contracts. You're going to want to cover all of the possible problems that I talked about here, and you're going to want to make sure that it's not traceable to you at all. Don't brag about this stuff, right? I think you could probably get away with this on a very small scale. If you're outsourcing your entire job, why don't you just become an entrepreneur instead? Like it just I don't know. To me, that seems silly. But I can see this. I can see you augmenting. And to some degree, this happens, right? We hire people to do stuff, right? You might hire a designer to freelance some design work. So what real difference is it? So I think there's some justifications you can make here, but it's a dangerous place, right? If you're really clever and you think you can work around this, I'm all for it. I think this is a great idea. I think we should be thinking out of the box more and doing kind of stuff like this, but it's definitely going to be dangerous. I can see why companies wouldn't like this, and like I said, if you're in a smaller company, I think you might be able to get away with it. Personally, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. I'd either be an entrepreneur or I would go to my boss and tell him. I just wouldn't want to take the risk. I wouldn't want to take their legal liability. What if they sue me? What if all this stuff happens? And it just doesn't seem like it's worth it to me. But to each their own. Great question though. That's an interesting thing. It's kind of funny. It's kind of funny that people make such big deals about this as well. But there you have it. That's my opinion on it. If you like this video, I have a demand, a request from you, which is to click the subscribe button below. If you're already subscribed, if you like this video, a thumbs up or a share is always appreciated. And I will talk to you next time. Take care.